Howdy, folks. Happy Monday. We are one day closer to NHL teams getting into their bubbles and their hub cities. Yeah, I know. That sounds weird. And closer, I believe it's 8 days away from exhibition games and a little over 2 weeks until the start of the, fingers crossed, start of the Stanley Cup playoff play-in round. We'll talk about a lot of that and some award announcements, but we'll start with Russ and the pre-show.
So the other day I put an article out on Sportsology that with MLB, I'm going to have the opinion that I'm going to try it before I buy it kind of thing, where I'm going to watch a couple bits of these early games and then decide if I should buy the package or not, because what am I really seeing? And at the end of that article, I kind of said, I would kind of hope that MLB puts something into these broadcasts that hasn't been there before to kind of, make the home viewing experience a little better, since there's no fans and they're just going to pipe in crowd noise. And then I said, who am I kidding? They're going to just try and do the cheapest broadcast possible. And with the exception of the ESPN one, that's exactly what they did. They have put nothing into these broadcasts, not even showing good nostalgic highlights, not showing an interview coming back for 20 seconds before a guy gets at bat, right. A previous interview, a fun none of this stuff is being done. Now, ESPN did a pretty good job. I watched a few minutes of Sunday Night Baseball, and they had their 3 announcers, and they also had a guest. It was Tim Anderson of the White Sox, who won the batting title. He was great. That was really good. That was actually better than showing the awful game that was on. And I would hope that that's what these other teams would do, but they're not doing it. And that kind of hurts the product, I think.
Anthony, I wonder whether these teams and these networks are sort of conserving their resources because they're exhibition games, and really, maybe they're getting their little bugs out of their system.
That's what I think. I think they're kind of working the kinks out. And again, Russ, I don't think you're wrong by saying, I have to sample the product before I buy onto it. You're a consumer. It's your time. So you want to spend it feeling that what I'm watching is what I am used to in terms of, and even if it's the other things that are surrounding it. If it does, that's a different story. And I had this discussion on a podcast today that I was with earlier. It was presentation elements, how the player is going to react, things of that sort. I do think that's another factor in terms of how do the players react to these same kind of different trappings, and how quickly do they adapt. But again, I would say that to me, Mike, I would agree. I would lean towards you in saying I think they are probably trying to work the initial kinks out, and then they start to roll things out as they get into the regular season.
Okay. Right. Now I told Russ this when we were talking about this yesterday, and I'm going to write about this because everybody wonders, how it's going to be watching Stanley Cup playoff games with no fans in the stands, potentially with piped in sound. And we saw a little bit of that, the example of that with the Mets playing the Yankees at Citi Field on Saturday, and then
only some of us saw that. Carl Ravitch led us all to believe it was going to be on ESPN, right. And it was not on Sunday.
Well, I'm special in Buffalo. We got a chance to see both games. Yeah, and the thing that I took, and it was one thing, but it, obviously it'll be a big thing. Like John Sterling and Susan Waldman and Michael Kay with David Cohn, they were all in separate booths at Yankee Stadium, and that's going to be apparently the way it's going to be for the entire season. When the home games are there, they'll be able to see the game there. But when it's at Citi Field or it's in Washington or whatever, they're broadcasting off a monitor. And I can't remember. Clint Frazier hits a home run against the Mets, and because they're watching it on a monitor, Kay says fly ball to left field, doesn't know that it's going out. Now, if he's at the game, he sees the angle, he sees the trajectory, he knows it, and he starts to lead into his call. In this instance, he's thinking fly ball to left field, and then the outfielder looks up. And I'm just saying, it's like the one benefit here for the NHL, Russ, is that Chris Cuthbert, John Forsland, Gord Miller, Jim Houston, they're all going to be in the arenas.
So right. So there's no delay.
There's no delay, but still, it will be different, but it will be a lot more similar than what Major League Baseball is doing.
Yeah, that's a good point. We'll quickly just talk about the NFL because waking up today is like these conversations Mike and I have been having offline for the last 2 months on what the NFL might do, because we're NFL fans. We have our favorite teams. Mm-hmm. And you wake up today with like next week supposed to be camp, and they have no idea of what they're doing in regards to health and safety. And it's easy to say, well, the owners are going to play no matter what, right? Because they played with replacement players.
Right.
But 3 of the Eagles, 3 really key Eagles tweeted. Drew Brees tweeted. Todd Gurley tweeted. Before you know it, there's going to be 10. Russell Wilson.
Russell Wilson did. Yep.
If the Seattle Seahawks don't have Russell Wilson, they might as well not have a season. So they need to do something, and they need to do it quickly. And it's really interesting that with all that's going on, with all that went wrong with Washington, nobody is saying anything bad about Roger Goodell yet. But you know what? It's going to start to happen.
Well, Anthony, I believe that this is a concerted effort on the part of the NFLPA to tell like their star players go out on social media and make commentary, because that may echo legitimate concern, but
it is legitimate. That's the point.
Right. I'm not saying it's not, but what I'm saying is they haven't said anything to this point, and now all of a sudden a week and a half before camp, they're saying it. I mean, I really don't believe, and maybe I'll be 100% wrong, I really don't believe that anybody, except somebody who has pre-existing conditions, or some like we've seen in the NHL or Major League Baseball, or somebody who's got family members who have pre-existing conditions, is going to sit in the NFL, because these players' careers are average is 3.5 years. This is their opportunity to make money. Maybe you're right, Russ. Maybe Aaron Rodgers, because he's made $150 million, will sit out, but most of them won't.
I'm not necessarily. Again, when you have the leadership, and again, I don't think, I know the NFLPA said that this was not, the players did this on their own. They all just happen to just have the same hashtag on this. We want to play, and it was basally slightly different accounts on the same topic.
Yeah,
which is fine. Again, just don't deny the fact that it wasn't a concern. That it's just these. I mean, these players all have their concerns. These are absolutely legitimate concerns. But at the same time, I would also say that it's going to be tough for the rank and file to say no, we're not going to play. It's going to be a real tough thing, and I do think in some of it, I wonder if this is a negotiating point for the NFL, that they're kind of held back on. Do they have a plan? Have they held back on talking about what that plan is? I don't know.
I will tell you this. An insider on ESPN said the NFL has basically been ignoring what their experts say because it costs money, and they've been trying to save money on this whole season. And I believe that.
That's tough. Again, I think they are probably waiting until the last possible second to roll things out because of the cost benefit, in their mind, their cost benefit analysis.
Right.
So it is just, but to me, that also at the same time fosters even more antagonism between the players and the ownership. Whereas I think
there's not enough as it is.
Exactly. Baseball, we've seen a ton of it. Football, it's about it just has that feeling that it's going to get there.
Yeah.
Versus the NBA and the NHL, which I'm not saying everything is in lockstep, but it looks a heck of a lot more united on those fronts than it does for the other two for the two outdoor sports.
Well, the NBA, I mean, the only thing we've heard out of that to the contrary in terms of peace, love, and understanding is complaining about the food and complaining that they can't get their hookers into the hotels. Other than that, everything is fine. With the NHL, I mean, honestly, I think that they approached it in the right way. I'm biased because I'm a big hockey fan, but the NHL approached it in the right way in the sense that they included the players in the entire process. It was a partnership. And they knew that if they didn't do that, this was not going to fly. And when we see like John Shannon reference this morning that the NHL is spending $50 to $70 million on the bubble hub city situation, yeah, the reason that they're doing that is because they're going to make probably $400 to $500 million in revenue from the television and advertising, but they have to do it. And if they didn't have the players on the same page, it wouldn't be done.
One more small thing. I know people are itching for the hockey, but they can wait 2 seconds. I saw that people know that I collect. So I saw that, an Upper Deck LeBron James rookie card went for $1.8 million. Of course, it's graded and it's very rare. And LeBron James actually came out after and said he has 2 of them. And that's something that's very normal, by the way. Players buy their own stuff all the time. Family members, a lot of times, bid on it for them. They give them the money back. That has been happening for forever. But my one story is when LeBron James got through the draft and Upper Deck was getting ready to do their photo shoot with him, I got a call from Upper Deck one day saying, "You live near Philadelphia, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "Could you go to Mitchell & Ness and get a Cleveland Cavaliers throwback jersey and we'll overnight it because we need to use it in his rookie photo shoot here?" And I said, "Sure." And luckily I went there and they had an Austin Carr one and so purchased it, and Upper Deck paid for the shipping. They paid me back for the jersey, but it wasn't for that card, but it was for his initial shoot. And, it made me think about that. Like that was kind of a cool thing. And it just shows you too with Mitchell & Ness, like how many things they have their fingers in at any time just for what they sell. So cool little story.
I wonder if that LeBron card that was sold for over $1 million, whether somebody took a one of those X-Acto razors and neatened up the edge on it. Like
you stop. You don't need to do that on newer cards.
Like the Hannes Wagner one that went.
They use scissors, Mike.
Yeah, and Wayne got his money's worth on that one.
Again, another shot at Gretzky. Bruce McNall may have bought it, and Wayne may have just given them the money.
Did he use it for bail?
All right, let's start.
Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, July 20th, 2020.
I'm Anthony Mignoni from Sunrise Philly Magazine.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Okay, we'll start with the award announcements that came out, 2 of them today. Start with the Selke, which I don't think anybody has a problem with any of the 3 that were announced in terms of being a worthy winner for the Selke, which is the best defensive forward. The nominees were Sean Couturier of the Philadelphia Flyers, Patrice Bergeron of the Boston Bruins, and Ryan O'Reilly of the St. Louis Blues. I'll just go first. The offensive production of these players should really have nothing to do with them winning the award. But
we should be at this point, Mike, it should be the top 2-way player award.
Right.
Because that's what most of the noms have been for the last decade plus.
Right, but we know it does, and the fact that Bergeron has won it multiple times, and that he scored 31 goals this year, and I think he's 34 years old, so this could be like one of the final times he gets nominated. To my mind, puts him in the lead to win it. I'm not saying he's going to, but I know how the NHL works and the people who vote on these awards works. The mindset is, okay, this might be his last chance, so let's give him one more.
Possible. Again, this is his record 9th nomination
I think so.
For the award. If he does win it, it's going to be, I think, really close. I
think it's going to be close too. I hope that that's not the case. Actually, the way Mike said it,
my feeling is that, and I know that we're going to be accused of sounding like a homer on this, but I do believe it's Sean Couturier's award.
No, I do too, and that's the way Mike said it is the way it appeared on my ballot. I voted O'Reilly as the winner last year, and he won, so it's fine. However people want to perceive that, but he does deserve it. I think at times he just probably doesn't get enough notice. I think Couturier is not a flashy guy. He doesn't do flashy things on the ice. He just plays hockey and he's smart and he knows how to play the game. But he's not in a lot of, highlights and in a lot of videos. And, so as an example, if they had the NHL.com producers voting on this, he wouldn't even be in the top 3.
Right. Now, yeah, you're right. This was the 9th nomination for Bergeron. He's won it 4.
Wait, you didn't trust Anthony? You went and double checked it?
Well, no, I wasn't double checking that. I was double checking. Let me finish.
I don't take any. We're good, Mike. You and I are good. It's okay.
I was double checking.
Russ is just trying to start crap here, and I get
troll it. Cohen at his utmost best. But no, this was his 4. He's won 4. So if he wins a 5th, he will eclipse Bob Gainey for the most Selkies. So that there's another thing.
Well, that means nobody in Montreal will vote for him.
Right. Well, yeah, of course.
Because A, he's a Boston player, and B, for what you just said.
I know how you sneaky Habs writers feel. No, just kidding. I'm just joking. But no. If any one of the 3 won, I think they would be worthy. I think Couturier has proven how good of a defensive forward he was at 19 years old when he shut down Malkin in a playoff series. So. There's no.
If you're going by the strict definition, I think of defensive forward, to me, and I love O'Reilly. Don't get me wrong; he's outstanding defensively. Yeah. But Sean Couturier has made his bread and butter of his entire career.
Yeah,
the defensive element of his game, and he then managed to, as his career has gone on, got back to the offensive numbers that he had in the queue prior to having mono. And now he's that forward that at the pro level that he was in Canadian Junior. In my mind, again, if I'm doing this, if we're going to go by strict defensive letter of the law here, by the way the award is given, again, it's Sean Couturier's, but he also has the offensive numbers to back it up too.
Now, in me being focused on the Leafs, I've heard Mitch Marner say, and they were talking about this in some of the Toronto radio stations. Marner apparently during a podcast during the shutdown with one of his former teammates, Connor Carrick, had said that he aspires to be a Selke nominee, that he's been working hard on his defensive game, and that's a goal for him, as I think probably it is with Austin Matthews. The funny thing is that Matthews probably has a better chance of getting that because the last winger to win the Selke, I believe, was Yuri Lettinen. It's always centers. It always seems to be centers.
You have to be utterly – Lettinen was such an utterly dominant defense. Like, whoever was getting cover on his side, it was like having a third high-level defenseman out there on the ice. That's how good Lettinen was. And it was almost impossible to deny. Plus, he had – again, we're coming back to the two-way forward. His offensive numbers are pretty decent, too. They weren't eye-popping, but they were enough where you had to be aware of him on the ice.
In 18-19, I voted Stone as my number 1. I felt like he deserved it. Since 2013-14, Couturier's finishes in the Selke. This is where it's kind of like I feel unfair. Selke in 2013-14, 9th. Then he's 30th. Then he's 8th. Then he's 47th. Then he's 2nd. Then he's 6th last year. Like, how is he 6th last year? Like that, come on. And that's where that there's a little bit of inequity in the voting for this award.
Yeah, I'm just looking.
Or the interpretation is taken a certain way, and you're maybe looking at only raw, whatever raw numbers that you're looking at. Whereas this is where it might require, if you're still again going to go by the letter of the defensive forward law, you're going to need to go a little bit deeper in terms of the nom.
Yeah, the last 15 winners have been centers. Lettinen won it in 2003. He was a winger. And then since then, Draper, Brindamore, Datsuk, Kessler, Bergeron 4 times, Taves, Kopitar twice, and O'Reilly.
I think it's just seen also as part of the responsibilities of the position too. Center, I think, often has they're the guys who may set the play. Sorry, I keep having a fly buzzing in my face.
No, that fly is still there.
He's still hanging. But we call him Buzz Lightyear now. He's the pet in the house now.
He's doing dive bombs.
He's just dive bombing me while I'm in the middle of doing this here. But
watching the movie Midway.
You can hire me. I will definitely go over there and get it.
I already splattered one. I thought it was him. It turned out it was a different fly. I think it's not the same one. No, I splattered one yesterday.
That was Jeff Goldblum.
Might have been. My father hates that movie, by the way. But now that we've gotten completely sidetracked.
Actually, I think I had Stone second in 1819. Now that I think about it, because I think O'Reilly's the winner.
It is part and parcel, I think, of just the interpretation that the center position requires a lot more defensive responsibility.
Right.
And when that may be as much open to interpretation as anything.
It should be.
Yeah.
Now, the other award that was announced was the Norris Trophy nominees, and no surprise here, at least with two of them, John Carlson from the Capitals, Roman Josi from the Nashville Predators, and Victor Hedman from the Tampa Bay Lightning. I believe Yosi's never won it, neither has Carlson. Hedman has won once, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So I know, Russ, I think you revealed who you voted for. If you didn't, I won't say it.
No, it was Roman Josi.
Okay. If there was a first half, second half award here, I think Carlson would win the first half and Josi would win the second half. So I'm just wondering. I wonder if East Coast bias is going to rear its ugly head because, Carlson on the Capitals might have a little bit of a leg up there.
I mean, he's a great player. There's no question about it. I think you have to look at the team Yosi's playing on, the amount of shots he had to take, scored 16 goals.
But again, we're getting away from the description of the award.
It doesn't matter. Like this is.
I know, and this is why I hate to not take this on a sidetrack, but
it's
why
okay.
many of these awards have to either be redefined because of the quote unquote the tiebreakers, which in reality have not really supposed to do with the description of the award.
End of the day, besides being a great defenseman, like nobody's going to talk about Roman Josi and say he can't play defense. So I'm ignoring that part because that's obvious. He led his team in scoring to the point where he had 65 points. The next closest guy had 48 points. Like, think about that.
No, it's certainly in terms of his overall impact. Heck, you could potentially make an argument for the fact that if you wanted to, an award for the Hart Trophy, but it's tough to say, and obviously in this circumstance. So the next best thing, obviously, would be the Norris. To me, had Carlson gone from pole to pole, didn't get hurt.
Oh, he'd have won easy.
He would have won it in a walk. I think Josi, and we've had this discussion on previous shows. I still feel obviously the same since there hasn't been any hockey since then. That I think if I had a vote in this thing, it would be for Roman Josi as well. But it would be close. It would be I have to think about it for sure.
Yeah, and I know Jeff Merrick on the noon show indicated, and I actually agree with him. If he had not have gotten hurt, you could have made a case for Dougie Hamilton because he was having such a great year, but he did get hurt.
He did.
That hurts.
So, all right, let's talk about. Right now the narrative going on with the league. We're getting daily updates. There are scrimmages going on. I know the Leafs have played 3 scrimmages over the last few days. Other teams are doing the same thing, but the constant narrative here is who's not playing in these scrimmages and why are they not playing in these scrimmages. One team that's had a lot of focus on it has been the Boston Bruins, and a report on the weekend said up to 9 players were out, including Pasternak, including Kasha. We heard today McAvoy didn't practice. Now the thing is, we don't know the reasons why, and we're never going to find out the reasons why because, like I said, even if there's a hangnail, it's unfit to play. So all this does really, I think, I understand the reason why the NHL did this, but all it does is feed into the paranoia of, oh my God, this COVID is rampant and running wild on the Bruins. They're screwed when it might not be. I mean, if there's 9 or 10 players, then it probably is, but we don't know for sure. But it could be hamstring injuries. It could be, a block. Somebody blocked a shot and they have a bruised ankle.
All right, so I've got an update from Matt Porter. Cassidy said that the Bruins hope to get through the first week injury free, and for the most part, that's happened. He said some of these absences are related to testing issues, so it's really. So they may be running into the same problem MLB ran into.
And the Canadians. The
issue also is that if the test is coming back, like I said, Jake Voracek's case, which he stated yesterday, that it was that the test comes back inconclusive.
Right.
not even just if it's positive, it comes back inconclusive. They can't go out on the ice until they take another test.
Right.
So that's the other thing that has to be a part of the consideration here, that they may have a bunch of players that went out, but maybe if there was a testing issue of some kind, that's a concern. But yeah, if you have that many guys who are out, your mind goes in that direction.
Yeah, and then the reports of Sidney Crosby not practicing. Again, we don't know whether it's an injury or whether it's a false positive or he's actually positive. And that's the thing. It's like I think like I said, I understand why the NHL had to do this, but I think that there's been sort of too much of a stigma placed on somebody being positive. It's not like they went out and said, "Oh boy, I want to catch COVID." It just did. It's a reality. We saw the numbers over the weekend of how many people have caught it. It's like people are not like going. A lot of people in certain areas of the country are going out and being irresponsible, but a lot of people aren't, and they're just catching it. So I don't know whether there's a negative perception. Although we have seen some people comment about the Bruins and saying if Pasternak has COVID, he acted irresponsibly. How do you know? How can
nobody knows? This is just people. Just honestly, welcome to the world of social media where people just spout off and they don't think and they don't know what's going on, and you're just reacting and, for lack of a better word, pulling stuff out of your ass.
Right.
Now, Eck wrote about something, and we've talked about the Islanders situation a few weeks ago when it came out that they basically slapped the padlocks on the Nassau Coliseum, so they're going to keep all the rats in there now, right, Russ?
Don't attach me to that statement. That is your own statement.
Dan Petra's going to come after me for that one.
Listen, when the vet got knocked down, all their rats left. It's possible they're gone.
Well, no, they just went to the Wells Fargo.
No, I don't think they did. But the vet was loaded with rats. Anthony will attest to that.
The vet was loaded with rats. The Spectrum in its final days, for sure.
Yeah,
had that issue. Is that whole kind of corner of Broad and Patterson? Deep break. If your property was close to the corner of Broad and Patterson, you were going to have a problem because you're also really close as well. Also, because you're very close to the subway line.
Right. I'm sure that when the Odd was knocked down a while back, that there were no rodents in that pristine building down near the waterfront.
I don't even know how the rats take the subway now because they have to use a card. I mean, I don't know.
Yes. But getting back to the Islanders, Eck mentioned today that they had put out feelers regarding playing in other NHL. Now, this is a little different because of what's going on with Major League Baseball. But on the weekend, we heard that the Blue Jays were basically not given permission by the Canadian government to play at Rogers.
They've been playing in the dark yesterday or this morning. There was a picture that went around, and the only thing that was lit up was home plate where the pitcher was, where the catcher and the hitter was, and the pitcher's mound, and everything else was like almost dark. Like, I don't know if they're trying to like literally get them out of there now by turning off the electricity. It's weird.
It's minimalism, yeah. But now apparently their single A facility in Dunedin is out because Florida is rampant with COVID. Yeah. The thought was the fallback was Buffalo, but apparently the players have expressed a displeasure at the potential of spending 2 months in Buffalo and getting takeout from the Anchor Bar every day. So there's been talk of them potentially playing in another major league stadium like Pittsburgh or Cleveland or something like that. I don't know how feasible that is because that they would have to play around with the schedule that's already been set. And if, what are you going to do? Play double headers where Pittsburgh plays in the day and then the Blue Jays play at night? I mean, that's nuts. But
it's going to be weird. The one thing I heard, Mike, not to cut you off, sorry, is that they're not going to be a barnstorming team. And Anthony and I lived through that once when we covered independent league baseball, and there was a team called the Road Warriors. I think they were up in Lehigh, right? And they didn't have I thought
it was was it the Lancaster Barnstorm?
Lancaster, yeah.
It was the Lancaster Barnstorm. I don't know what I'm forgetting it. I'd have to.
They didn't play home games.
I have to talk to. I'm forgetting the reporter's name.
Mike Rodano would know.
Mike Rodano. Oh my God, sorry, Mike. Mike Rodano would have remembered that name off the top of his head.
He was the mayor, but essentially this team, Mike, basically had no home field, and they went through a whole season that way.
Yeah, they were traveling. The traveling Wilburys.
And in this case, what Eck had mentioned was the fact that the Islanders. I mean, I'm assuming that they don't want to pay what the fee that it would entail to play at Barclays, so they're exploring options of playing at Madison Square Garden or the Prudential Center, and Eck reported that Dolan basically said not a chance in hell. So
there's a long-standing thing with the Rangers and the Americans once, and it didn't turn out well. They shared MSG for a while. Ever since then, it was always known that they would never share it again, ever again.
Yeah. So I mean, Jan,
back way,
Jan, what is your perspective on this? Because I mean, if the island and let's say this. If there are no fans next year to start the year, this will be a lot easier because then you're not putting a burden on Islanders fans having to travel to Newark to go see Islanders games. There are no fans, so that won't be a factor. But if there are fans, you're screwing your fan base. You really are. But the Islanders have screwed their fan base moving between Barclays and the Coliseum back and forth. So what's new?
First of all, Russ, if Red Dutton comes back and curses them some more, we're in big trouble in terms of the Americans. That's why I suppose it took them so long to win a cup. It's interesting. So if there are no fans, you have to wonder, can the Islanders somehow, it's going to sound weird, play at Iceworks, which is their practice arena, right? As opposed to having to try to find another arena.
If you have no fans, I guess.
Right? I mean, if you're not going to have fans there, what's the difference? If you have a regulation rink, they could probably play there. If there are fans, first of all, in terms of screwing them, going to Brooklyn is not. I mean, it's easier than going to Newark. Sure. You're still screwing the fan base because you've gone to Brooklyn. Going to Newark, you can actually take the train into New York from the island and then just get on the New Jersey Transit that literally leaves you right across the street from the building when you come out of the hotel there. It's a relatively, I wouldn't say it's an easy commute.
It's like a 5-block walk. Yeah.
It's a little weird.
Can I quote Billy Joel here?
Is the same because you can go out through Atlantic Terminal in Brooklyn and then basically have the same direction in terms of going there. So it's not a great solution. First of all, Dolan has no love lost for the Islanders, so him saying no is not a major shock. Even if he could maybe win some points in terms of allowing them to play there, but Dolan doesn't like that organization anyway, so no surprise.
Anthony, let me just say this: I've been to that building, the Prudential Center. I've been in that neighborhood. Even if it's a block away, I would be scared to walk to that.
All I gotta say is one thing.
I will tell you this story. I was actually at the first ever event at that arena, which was a Bon Jovi concert.
Yeah, I was there too. I covered it.
The interesting part was the amount of security around the arena and about 2 blocks within the arena was great. When you drove past about 2 blocks, not so much.
Yeah, but I can say
New York. But now it's a lot more different because it's much more built up around there.
I can say that about Yankee Stadium too, Jan. The first time I went there, I went down Jerome Avenue and I went a couple blocks further away from the where the police had a presence. It was like I was driving in downtown Beirut.
Mike, I went to college in Washington Heights, and we used to get a gypsy cab, 4 of us, to go to Yankee Stadium for about $4 back then, and even then it wasn't the greatest going a 10-minute cab ride. So Jerome Avenue is a little better in terms of the parking and the I'll call it ambiance around the stadium. But clearly, it's not necessarily one of those where you have it like even first way. Look at Baltimore before they built up the Inner Harbor. I mean, when they first built the stadium there, you did not want to necessarily be around Camden Yards when it was initially built.
The capital of the Orioles and sexually transmitted diseases. But continue, man.
All I can say is, and I'm going to quote Billy Joel when I say this, that we're getting dangerously close to saying there ain't no island left for Islanders like me.
You can find a piano on the sidewalk and play it on Long Island.
One thing about that Bon Jovi concert was I parked like 3 blocks away and I couldn't find my spot right away. And the cops picked me up and said, having trouble finding your spot? Get in. And then they told me the trouble they were having in the neighborhood at that time and then got me to my car, right? But I did a live hit on Sirius XM, and told them exactly the way it was. No problem for me. Somebody on NHL Network, I think it was Melrose, talked about it, and then he got in trouble and had to apologize. So that was pretty funny.
But Cohen, we expect him to be a wild card. You, Barry, on the other hand,
right? But what's interesting now is we look at pictures of Belmont, and clearly it's not a year away. Like it's 2 years away, and so maybe they're on time still for the next season. I've been to Iceworks, and I've seen the Islanders show their practices, like their scrimmages from Iceworks. I don't know if they have the right camera angles there. I think that could be an issue. But again, we're talking about a franchise that basically has Hofstra as their radio station, which broadcasts for like 8 miles. So it's like it's literally like 2,000 watts.
Yeah, well, it's an FM station. That's why.
But it's still ridiculous. You literally. I bet you Jan couldn't even get an Islander game at his house.
I'd have to check it out, and I don't think I've ever necessarily tried. So. Not necessarily one of those things that I'm usually listening to. I have friends of mine who are enough Islander fans in the neighborhood that I'm sure will update me anything is going on that I need to know about.
He'd have to get on a ladder, get on his roof, and hold out
Or I could literally drive down the blocks. I'm about 10 minutes from the arena here.
But if you think about it, from the terms of being an Islander fan with that franchise, with all the owners, with all this stuff with the arenas, and now they're looking for a place to play for a year. Like, it just never ends. If you're an Islander fan, it's just like all of this is just like you just have to laugh it off.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think the bigger thing was moving to Brooklyn because that, I'll say, it ripped the heart out of the fabric of the Islander fans who are used to obviously being on the island, right? There was a coterie of people who drove from Suffolk County to Nassau County, right? The people who were in Nassau County, in essence, in their backyard. Now you're asking everybody to transport on the Long Island Railroad, which, by the way, the Islanders did as well to go there, which also created some problems because nobody moved towards Brooklyn. Anybody who was out here stayed on the island and had to then commute on the railroad.
And by the way,
their own home games, which is a lot also to a certain extent.
If anybody wants to look at old episodes, Eck argued this point with me, and I said to Eck, you add on a half hour to anybody's commute on that train line, and they will not go, and attendance will not be good. And Eck argued that fact with me, whether Mike remembers or not, who knows?
I do.
You do,
but it's not even train. Russ, it's. I can tell you the big thing from friends of mine who had major parties in the parking lot was the tailgating, right? And again, I had the big argument when they wanted to build a Jet Stadium by the Hudson Yards. The big argument then was people who didn't like it because you couldn't tailgate. I can tell you because the fact the proximity to Hofstra and how close it is to the Southern State Park, which is out by me, and all the entrances and egresses, people would just wanted to tailgate. And they built it up. I mean, part of it's been sold to Northwell Health here in terms of the parking lot, but you had that ability to be able to tailgate, or people literally had a 15-minute ride at times to get home because of where they lived and where the fans were. In Suffolk County, wasn't that bad for people. It was a half an hour, 35-minute ride.
But it took you a half an hour to get out of that
as opposed to taking the train an hour to go to Brooklyn and then having to go walk to the stadium from there.
But Jan, let's be fair. It took you a half hour or more to get out of that parking lot because that was the most poorly constructed parking lot in the history of the world. Literally one way in, one way out. And it got to the point where even me, as like a 14, 15-year-old, my dad would literally not even go into the parking lot. Yeah. He would make me walk to the outside of the fence and pick me up there on Hempstead Turnpike.
Yeah, Hempstead Turnpike. That's what everybody would go. But the good part is, for me, if I got out, I could take local roads home and not have to worry about getting on.
Right. Russell, you're on your Russell. Have a good time. You're on your own.
Yeah. I've heard that way too many times.
But that's in the 70s where you can get away being a 14 and 15-year-old and not have that big of a problem.
No, it's true.
My parents made me take the Metro bus and to the suburbs and pick me up from Thruway Mall for people in the Buffalo area, which, it's like the arena was 15 minutes away, so they didn't even want to be bothered to drive into the city to pick me up. They made me do all the work.
I was fortunate enough growing up in South Philadelphia where I was at, I literally was about 8 blocks from the stadium. So you could literally on a nice day walk down there and get in and not worry about having to drive or park anywhere. So I always, knowing other people's experiences, I very much appreciated my own situation.
Now here's something that might happen.
Though, if you think about commuting, right? So MSG, you have this arena right above Penn Station, right? Mm-hmm. Even the Barclays, right? Technically, you can take the train to Atlantic Terminal there and walk there as well. Newark, you basically walk through the hotel when you come out either the PATH train or New Jersey Transit, and you're there as well, right? So I mean, look, I've gone to Olympic Stadium in Montreal, and it's closed now, but you had the same thing. You could literally take the tube right there, walk underneath the arena and get there, right? Most places don't have that ability and functionality. Still doesn't make it any easier, especially for fans that are used to driving. If you go used to driving, then have to take the train, it's a whole different experience.
Sure.
Especially if you're going with little kids and have to worry about getting them home.
Yeah.
Much different experience.
Here's what will happen with the Islanders, because just it makes sense. They'll go to Iceworks based on the fact that there won't be fans, and then like that February, the NHL will announce fans are allowed back in the building, and they'll have the capacity of 750 or 1,000.
Oh my God!
Like that, that's what's going to happen.
I mean,
you could see it.
That would be a financial disaster for them.
Right. That's why I don't even know why Iceworks is coming up, because nobody expects there not to be fans the following season. Well, that's why I don't understand why it's coming up at all.
Don't you remember when the plans being formulated for, coming back and playing games like in April, they were talking about playing at practice facilities, and that was ruled out completely because of camera angles and things of that nature.
Yeah,
that's going to be the case here. They're not going to allow one team to play at a practice facility. They're going to have to pony up money and pay the rent at Barclays, or find somebody like the Devils who will allow them to play there. They're not going to be able to play at a practice facility. There's no way.
But do you think it's going to be a commuting nightmare, or fans are going to don't want to show up in Brooklyn? Tell them they have to go to Newark and go see. And again, nothing against Newark. They're not going to want to go watch their team play in New Jersey.
They're already 30th. They're already 30th in attendance. They can't really get much worse.
Yeah, and if Matthew Barzal holds out, that'll be even worse. Okay, Russ, I know that you wanted to talk about some KHL stuff, and I know I did see this little bit of news. And if you had asked me back in the day, a Russian player who would never be a head coach in any professional league, it would be Alexei Kovalev.
Oh, you see, you don't know.
No,
you're going by 1994 standards, Alexei Kovalev.
No, I'm going by the standards of him when he was with the Canadiens. Remember, he had this reputation of being sort of like a great talent, but somebody who had trouble, focusing sometimes. Like for 10 games.
No. He just did too many moves. Like the way he played was a lot like Ales Hemsky, where sometimes he would do too much with his stick. Had nothing to do with his hockey brain, though. Like, I would say in his last 4 or 5 years, any chance I had a chance to talk to him, I would. And I would always walk away with the impression that this guy's going to be a coach. This guy knows so much. I mean, you got to remember, he played to a pretty good age.
Yes.
And he did know what he was doing. He knew how to train. He knew where to be on the ice. He knows how to talk the game. I just think what you're talking about is what was emblematic in his game, but not his coaching style. I actually think he'll be a great coach.
Okay. He's been named the head coach of the Kunlun Red Star, which I thought had been shut down this year.
They are playing I believe they're playing. I have to probably confirm this with Jillian Kemmer. I think they're playing in Moscow and they're sharing an arena in the meantime. So they're playing.
Okay.
But they also wonder as well whether or not that was also a motivating factor for Kovalev, was that it was close by. He didn't have to travel all the way to Kunlun to coach the team. Although again, there's some decent Kofers and investors that are behind that team. It sort of bring him on board, I'm sure wasn't cheap, but at the same time, it's going to be interesting to see this. Kovalev, in terms of the fact that he was, it's superstar level ability. I think we all agree with that, and how he's going to relate potentially to star players. But again, he's starting off again in the K with a Kunlun team that's been.
Yeah, he was an assistant.
He was an assistant for the team, so it's not like he's just coming in and.
So the players know him.
So the players know him, and obviously, I think the management feels comfortable enough that he's going to be able to handle it. And it's kind of funny. Again, he's taking over the team that his former head coach used to run as well, and Mike Keenan. So now the obvious question I think everybody asks is Kovalev going to put anybody out there for a 7-minute shift like Mike did to him?
That, or will he fax in his resignation?
You know that. Kovalev, he'll just do the shit. He did the shift and he smiled afterwards.
I know. He was a workhorse. Kovalev was super strong.
Maybe the Islanders can play in that building too.
But here's the other one. This is a big deal. This is being proposed, and I'm going to just tell you how it is in their words, because it's pretty amazing.
Okay.
Among the proposals is a law that would oblige under 23s to pay compensation to the clubs that train them if they choose to move abroad to further their careers. That is unbelievable. That is basically saying we're tired of guys like Shesterkin and Sorokin leaving early. This year we got raided by the NHL with Kaprizov and everybody else. So now if you future guys want to go, we're going to come up with a fictitious price and bill you for the training we've been giving you here. Even though they're making money off these players.
It's like a backdoor fee. Like
it is.
Not quite like, it's not the same as like soccer where you have to pay a fee in order to bring the player over to your team. But
right.
Yeah, but the reason that this mass exodus happened is because they implemented a salary cap that was ridiculous. So they only had themselves to blame. But let me ask you this, because this is what I said to you, Russ. I said, okay, say it's a big Russian prospect. Say for example, Askarov. Okay, yeah. So he gets drafted in the first round, and the Detroit Red Wings, who take him in the draft, have no problem with him staying over in the KHL for a couple years and seizes. But at age 21, there is no time frame in terms of their rights expiring because there's no transfer agreement. So he could stay over there until he's 24 if they wanted to, like Sorokin did, and they would still have his rights. But they want him to come over because they need a goaltender and they're in the midst of the rebuild. You're telling me, even though the KHL is probably saying we want the money from the player, that the Red Wings aren't going to slip money to the player to get that, to pay it off so they can get him? I think they will.
This is going to be like, this is your bill for the last 4 years for the expert training we've given you for playing with, and you could fill in.
So what will happen is that when the contract, the player will have to play it, but I guarantee when they negotiate the contract, Russ, some of those costs may be included in there so that the player can then pay.
Okay, I mean, teams pay off.
There's a backdoor way. It's a backdoor way to do it.
But I mean, teams didn't pay for Pavel Bori's Russian mob threats. There's only so much teams are going to pay for.
Yeah.
You know?
You're going to start putting in for meals also. You're going to start charging them room and board as well. You're going to have that baked in. You're going to have to pay for your own meals, get a bill every time.
I'm telling you, there's going to be an invoice waiting for Askarov in 2 years. That's what's going to happen.
It's going to be a Russian dumpling surcharge.
That'll be $3.99 for this, and there'll be $1.48 for that, and
$50,000 for Borscht.
If you think about it, if they lose 3 or 4 really star players a year and charge them an absurd amount, that's money that goes back into their league. That's what they're looking for.
But that's their fault. I mean,
that's what they're looking for, Mike. But the other thing that's happening is, and we saw this with the Prohorkin signing and Maxim Shushko, because more out of he wanted a place to play.
There's 2 different categories here, exactly.
Yeah, one is talking about other leagues being a place to play, and then Prohorkin because he's still a drawing card there, and he's a cheap asset for them who could bring in some fans. So the NHL is losing some players, Mike, in a different way now because of their salary.
Some because of the lack of the minors for development. That's one half, but again, they still hold the rights to that player.
Of course, yeah.
So really, it's the mid-level kind of players who, if they're not under contract and there's not a way forward, or an opportunity that they're going to be on the postseason roster, they're not going to sit still. They're going to go play.
If this U23 law, as it is worded, happens, there will never be an NHL KHL transfer agreement ever again. That would completely kill it.
Do you think it will have a chilling effect on drafting of Russian players?
No, because I think you're still going to draft them. I just think the player now is going to be prepared. And like Anthony said, maybe there'll be some sort of, helpful.
They may be more like if they want to be in the NHL, they may be making that they may be signing that contract sooner, making that jump sooner.
Right.
That's where I think it potentially will happen. All depending, again, every player is individually different in terms of if they're comfortable with coming over or not. Just
but what's going to happen with that?
The draft player doesn't mean necessarily that they're going to come.
No, but what they're going to do? It's basically going to be like a hotel reservation that you didn't show up for and they're charging you for anyhow. For Askarov, they're going to be like, we understand you're leaving at the age of 19. We're still billing you through the age of 23, and you'll have to pay that amount.
Great. We're gonna charge you for the year that you played in the VHL at age 16. Great. All right, let's talk about the St. Louis Blues, the reigning Stanley Cup champions, and their potential fortunes in this Stanley Cup playoffs and going forward. It was a tight series against the Bruins. They won in Game 7 in Boston. We've talked enough about how Binnington, really helped them get over the hump, because they really didn't have great goaltending for years, with whether it be, if you want to go back to Roman Turek or Jake Allen or a number
Ryan
of
Elliott, yeah.
Ryan Elliott, a Miller for a year, like half a year or even less. They bring in Binnington in January. He has an unbelievable second half, enough to be nominated for the Calder. They go through the playoffs and win. And Russ, I think the thing hanging over this team, and I don't think it'll distract them, is the fact that they're probably going to lose their captain after this year. I don't think it can be understated that unless he's prepared to take a lot less and a lot less term and a lot less dollars, that this will be the last game that Alex Pietrangelo plays in a Blues uniform.
It does kind of seem like this is the last go round for that, but I want to say 2 months ago we had Craig Berube on Stick to Hockey, myself and Jason Bertidis, and when we were talking to him, I made sure I brought up Jordan Binnington because Jason was still not 100% on board that he was going to continue on as this great goalie. And the one thing that Berube said was, it's not all about the numbers with this guy, because he does make the right saves at the right time. And we talk about this all the time. And if you don't make the right save, it could kill a club's momentum. If you stand on your head, even if it's only for 2 minutes in a game, and then your team recovers and it does everything else it's supposed to, you have weathered the storm and honestly given your team a lot of confidence. And we've seen what that does. That, and I'll tell you, I mean, we all probably panned this, but maybe the biggest comeback success story is David Perron. I mean, 6 points, 25 goals. Like, he always had the talent, but the post-concussion was definitely taking him out to the point where I think we all thought he's never going to be the same. He's had just a tremendous goal with this team the last couple of years. Jaden Schwartz healthy now at 57 points was a big help too. Robert Thomas, I mean, you want to go back to that draft.
Crazy draft.
A lot of people didn't value him enough. And so all of that, they're set up really well. I just think we're all conditioned to think they can't repeat. But in this short run now, they definitely could repeat.
I think they could, yeah.
Well, Anthony, the thing I agree with that, what Russ just said, in terms of I would have been skeptical in March when the season was paused whether they could repeat, because it was unknown whether Tarasenko would be back. And we know Tarasenko had a big part in terms of being a linchpin scorer for them to win the Cup last year. But now, with the delay of 4 months, he's back. He's 100%.
Yeah.
And them, even though they lost Bouwmeester, they added Scandella, they added Falk. Their defense, their blue line might be stronger than it was last year.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I had when I recorded a podcast earlier today, I was having a real tough time with picking when I was asked to pick who I think was going to come out of the West. And I hovered a lot on. I did end up going with Colorado, but it's. I'm not gonna lie to you and say I feel strongly about that particular pick. Not the way St. Louis is.
It's hard to pick against the Blues.
It's hard to pick against them. Unlike last year, where they kind of came hard the second half of the season.
Right.
They were strong from post. They've been strong from post to post.
Yeah.
And I think they've got every bit of motivation right now as a team that never won a Stanley Cup to try to capitalize on this situation, as long as they certainly have Pietrangelo in the fold and their defense is as deep as it is.
Yeah, like what are they missing?
They've got a chance to have as close to, you don't want to say a dynasty, but at the very least have a legacy team where you've won a couple Stanley Cups and really sort of establish the fact that this wasn't just a freak. This wasn't just a freak occurrence. We're legitimately that good. We're legitimately that strong. Most Western teams have tried to build along the lines of now the way we have built our team, and we're still better than the rest of all of you. So it's tough again for me to pick against the Blues, even though I decided in the end to go with the Avs, because I think I like the Avs a lot, but it's not a strong recommendation, not with the Blues being where they're at.
Jan, do you see any flaws in this team, or what do you think?
I mean, as you mentioned, the thing I was going to talk about was Tarasenko coming back, right? Gives them that score. You can question a little bit their second line left winger, Zach Sanford's done a nice job. I'm not sure if you say that he's, elite in terms of a top six, but then you go down the rest of that lineup in terms of the talent that exists there, and it's a pretty solid team. Sundqvist and Steen on the third line, Tyler Bozak, and as Russ mentioned, Robert Thomas. Defensively, you mentioned obviously they're even stronger than last year. We talked about, Anthony, also their physical team, but they also have the quickness to be able to beat you in that type of game if you want to, and they have the sniper and a guy like Tarasenko and Schwartz, and then you have Biddington to stop anything that comes his way and carry a team if necessary as they did last year. So when you look at all the components, we used to talk a lot about St. Louis being a disappointment because they seem to have all the pieces to make a run, yet somehow always fail to do so. And then when they made that switch to Binnington from Jake Allen, they caught lightning in a bottle to a certain extent, but B, then they ended up moving forward through the playoffs and beating the Bruins in Game 7 last year. So on paper, they probably look even stronger. And at worst comes to worst, they're as strong as they were last year, and I don't think there's any material flaws. And we also can't talk about the quote-unquote post-Cup hangover because they're a rested team now, like everybody else. We might have talked about come April time that to try to make another run, especially if you're going 7 games a lot in several series, may be difficult, especially without Tarasenko. Now you've added back your top scorer. You've also now had the opportunity to gain some perspective and, more importantly, some rest, like everybody else. So it's a tournament that everybody's starting from scratch, but you now have had the additional time off that you didn't have last year because you made that long cup run.
Yeah, just looking at the Blues cap, it's like if Petrangelo, as John Shannon would say.
And you're supposed to say.
Yeah, I know, but I'm an Italian, so I'm saying it the way I want to say it.
I'm glad you did it first because I almost would have slipped up, Mike, but you slipped up first, so thank you for doing that for me.
I always lead. You follow, Anthony, I'll lead. But if his contract was 1 year longer, they wouldn't have any issues because after next year, Schwartz, Steen, and Bozak are all UFA. That's over $15 million in cap space. Now, I don't know whether Doug Armstrong is going to buy out one of those guys or maybe convince Alex Steen to retire, or maybe if they win a second Stanley Cup in a row, he will. But that's the only way I see them being able to re-sign Petrangelo is by one of those guys retiring or one of them being bought out or traded, along with Jake Allen, who they're spending as much money on their backup as they are on their starter. There are ways that they might be able to re-sign their captain, but I just don't know whether they're going to go through all the machinations to get it done. Thoughts?
I mean, my view on this is I think right now everybody talks about it being an overarching concern. To be honest with you, I think when the playoffs start, this gets shunted completely to the background and becomes a concern for after the playoffs. And if they make another run, I think you can almost argue if they make another run, there's even more of a likelihood they try to find another way to get him to stay, because if they think they have a shot for another cup or two, especially, Parayko isn't old, Falk they just re-signed, they have Sanford, they have Tarasenko, they have Schwartz, they have Perron, they have O'Reilly. You have the components to maybe try to extend the run a little bit. That may make them more likely to try to find the room to bring him back.
Yeah. Couple notes.
Wait, breaking news.
Go ahead.
Josh Hosang's new song has dropped. I just put the link in our chat. I don't know if you want to pull it up, Mike, and sample it, but
not really.
Apparently that just Dan Petru just retweeted it. But
is there a Lou diss track in there?
I don't know.
I'll sample it after. I'll sample it after the show. I don't want to give it too much pub. Now, a couple news and notes here. The Blue Jackets added Josh Anderson to their 34-man roster. That does not mean he's going to make their playoff roster, but it is encouraging since he had what they thought was season-ending shoulder surgery in March. Russ, we've seen him at his best and at his most physical in a playoff scenario, and if he actually could play anywhere close to 100%, he's a difference maker against a team that has trouble playing against physical players. So that would be a swing for Columbus if he could play against Toronto.
Yeah, if he were to play against Toronto, I think Toronto would have to figure out what to do when he's out on the ice. Like, what line are we going to put up when Josh Anderson's out there? Because you don't want, and far be it for me to say that Torts would put out Josh Anderson's line against Marner's line and try and crunch Marner a few times, because that's exactly what he would do. Yeah. And so you as Sheldon Keefe would have to sort of figure that out now and figure out how to combat that, because that's indeed what would happen.
Kyle Clifford being a lot more ice time.
Yeah.
Now, this note here, Louis Eriksson was asked by a reporter in Vancouver about whether he plans out to play out his contract.
Was it Tommy Sepala?
No. Brandon Batchelor. I'm sorry.
Oh, but it ain't Tommy. And listen, Tommy isn't saying it, then I don't believe it.
Okay, but Eriksson said, "I love to play hockey. I've been doing it. I've been doing this my whole life. I will never quit playing hockey." Which means, screw you, Canucks. I've got 2 more years at $6 million, and you're going to pay me every red friggin' cent.
The NHL is going to quit him, though. That's what's going to happen.
He didn't say where he's going to play. He just said he's going to play.
Exactly. He's basically
going to be in Modo.
You're not getting me out of here of my own volition. You're going to have
one piece of update. So the NHL released their statement on the COVID-19 testing results.
Okay.
So the NHL concluded the first 5 days of Phase 3 of its return to play with 2 positive test results for COVID-19 among the 2,618 tests administered to 800 players. Both players who tested positive have self-isolated and are following CDC and Health Canada protocols. During Phase 3, NHL will continue to provide regular updates on the number of tests administered to players and the results of those tests. And, of course, the kicker, the league will not be providing information on identity of the players or clubs.
No, of course not.
Of course not.
And what? If I were Louis Eriksson, I could go to Modo and I could play on a line with Adam Tambellini, a failed draft pick for the New York Rangers, who'd scored 28 goals for them last year.
And the son of a former Canucks general manager.
Yeah,
that may have been a favor pick. I don't want to say that, but it may have been.
Yeah, but I mean, see, this is the situation we're gonna see play out in a couple months. Is the fact that with the cap so tight, these players, Lucic, Eriksson, maybe James Neal, although Neal had 19 goals. These teams are going to be in a position where they have to buy, unless it's a guy like, and that's the thing, Lucic has heavy signing bonus, so there's no cap relief if you buy him out. But some of these players who open up cap space, these teams are going to have to buy him out because they didn't get a compliance buyout, and they have to open up space.
Do you know how expensive it's going to be with a flat cap to get this done now? Yeah. Don't go by what it cost previously, because the price just went way up.
Yeah.
Well, part of it also is the what we talked about, right? The number of years remaining on the contract, and how, remember, it's forever 2 years for every year associated for the buyer, right? And then you talked about projecting. You need to then project forward what your cap is going to be in a year or two,
right,
which is when the heavier hit is going to happen on your bottom line. Because year 1 you're getting that discount, but year 2 you're taking the hit in terms of what that cap impact is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, Eriksson's got 2 years left.
So that's 4 years.
Yeah, the cap hit is $6 million per season, but he's making $4 million in real money each of the last 2 years. But half of the $8 million remaining is signing bonus. So there's no there's no alleviation with the signing bonus. So they're not gonna save a ton. I'm looking at it right now. His cap,
hold on, but it still impacts your cap.
Right. They only
signing bonus is still factored into your cap. It's not
right.
Right. So you're maybe talking about dollars as opposed to cap. So it's salary versus AAV is the big differential that you have to talk about, which is why we talked about teams like Ottawa.
Right.
May 1 after July 1, when you pay that signing bonus and you trade the guy, they can take the full cap hit, but not have to worry about the dollars that are going out of their own pocket.
Right, because you're not
dishing out the money because it's already been paid.
Right, and they're more interested in getting to the cap floor than and they may allow.
Ottawa's not going to do this. I can tell you right now.
They're a team like Ottawa, though, in a situation where they're more concerned about the cap floor.
No, I get it.
And also they don't want to expend the dollars to actually pay the guy.
I can tell you, Pierre, what I believe Pierre Dorian's plan is to keep reaching the cap floor is to keep paying his own prospects a little ahead of time to long-term deals to do that. They're not going to do it this way.
Yeah, but more than likely, like they have Gaborik, and Gaborik's making $4 million or something like that.
Has Gaborik even visited Ottawa?
He played for them the year that they traded him.
How many games did he play?
It was like 14 or 15, and then he had back surgery, and he's never been heard from again.
And he's never been back.
Just to finish off on Eriksson, if they bought him out, they would only save $333,000 against the cap the first year. They would save $2.3 million the second year, and then it would just spread. It would spread out $666,000 the final 2 years, because it's a spread out over double the amount of the remaining. So they really don't save a ton. So
the $2.3 million when you have to sign some of your own players to long-term extensions,
right,
and a flat cap, maybe enough of a savings to warrant it.
Right, but you're paying. Go ahead.
No, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Right.
Right. You talked about Steen. It's the same thing, right? If you can get enough of a savings in a year, and then the following year you have guys that are coming off your books, that may be enough of an incentive to try to do it.
Yeah, I'm just looking up Steen's last year of his contract just to see if it was backloaded or front loaded, or it's a $3.5 million payout on a $5.75 million cap hit. So if they bought him out, the cap hit would be about $1.2 million for 2 years. So they'd gain over $4 million in cap space.
That's a lot of cap space.
That's a lot of cap space. All right, good show, guys. We will be back tomorrow. We're probably going to do an earlier show tomorrow, like maybe 11 o'clock, but we'll confirm it tomorrow morning. For Jan Levine, not departed. For Anthony Mangione. For Russ.
Find a new line.
Well, somebody said it.
Everybody keeps saying it. I know, because somebody else said it once, so it's become the call celeb every time I'm on.
It's part of the show culture. We
should just start playing the
culture. Oh, good to know.
Dropkick Murphys every time he leaves the show.
I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching, and remember, without the buzz,